And good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Rise and Shine with Joe the Therapist. My name is Johanna Dinsdale from Multi Therapy. I am a virtual qualifying therapist in Canada, Ontario. And this morning, we like to catch up on the community, what everybody's up to. And I always have a bit of a theme for each morning. And today's theme is going to be all about types of thoughts. It's interesting. It's something that you don't think about too much. Oh, there's types of thoughts, but absolutely. There is a lot of different types of thoughts. And in therapy, sometimes we call them cognitive distortion. So, typically we focus on the ones that we want to work on or improve. Today, we're going to be talking about types of thoughts. So, one that I probably see the most often, which is interesting, is something called all or nothing thinking. It's where people kind of get stuck in this mentality that if something happens, it's a complete disaster. So, for example, I ate more than I planned, so I completely ruined my diet. I've completely destroyed the whole thing, right? Or, for example, I'm going to cut out all junk food all of the time because that's the only way to be healthy. This kind of extreme behavior can be a little counterproductive, actually, right? Because by, reducing all this stuff so much, it's actually causing you to really miss that thing as opposed to moderation, right? Another example of all or nothing thinking is if I made a mistake, I'm a failure, right? That kind of thinking. All right, another type of thinking, guys. We're talking about types of thoughts here. I'm a therapist if you're new. And we're going to talk about fortune telling. Have you ever tried fortune telling, guys? That's when you're trying to predict the future all the time. So, for example, oh, I'm not going to try that because I'm going to fail. It's like, okay, you don't know that 100%. There might be a very good chance, but, you don't know that for certain. Or, for example, saying I can't concentrate during this, like, if I do an exam, I can't concentrate, right? These things are really important to analyze because it's giving you a key on how to self-improve, right? If I'm saying, like, for example, I literally just did, oh, I'm terrible at exams, like I just can't do them well. Now, let's challenge that thought. I was able to get my master's done. Sure, I might have struggled through it and I might not enjoy exams, but I did it. Through resilience, it might have been a bad time, but I actually can complete exams, even though they're not enjoyable. So that's just a perfect example, just a natural example of, okay, fortune telling, creating a bad experience for me. Instead, I could say, I'm feeling a bit anxious about this exam, but I've passed all my exams in the past, or most of them. Can't say I've passed every exam. Yes, indeed. Have you guys ever done that? Sometimes I do a lot of fortune telling. And I think it's my way of kind of predicting social interactions a lot of the time. I'm saying like, oh, we're going to this event. How can I plan? Okay, if this person says this, I'm going to do this, which is like ridiculous. Like just go to the event and enjoy. But we come up with all sorts of these crazy coping mechanisms. And it's always good to check in, right? Check in with why you do these things. What's the next one I'm going to talk about? Oh yeah, discounting the positive. This is a fun one. So yeah, discounting the positive would be, for example, I passed my exam, but I got lucky. Right? It's kind of diminishing the work that I put in to pass my exam, which isn't really fair, is it? It's like, okay, I passed it. Doesn't matter if maybe there was a component of luck, but maybe it's because I was working really hard and I studied hard. Yeah. So if you find yourself doing that, check in with yourself. Often, discounting the positive happens when you accomplish something big and you kind of, it's almost like you're trying to be humble, right? It's like, oh, most people get into college, right? So, for example, I'm scared of flying on planes, so they must be dangerous, right? And these ones are often like surprising when people really think about it. It's like, oh, I guess you're right. Planes are actually the safest form of transportation, but I felt like it was such a dangerous thing. I really built this up in my head as this being dangerous just because of my emotions attached to whatever that thought is. Yeah. So to counteract that emotional reasoning, it's just if you're having a strong belief about something, just recognize, okay, how much is this attached to my emotions? Is it a lot or a little bit? I don't know. All right. Next, let's talk about labeling. So that's when we put a big label on somebody. Um, for example, he's a huge loser. He's a bully. She's a complete jerk, right? There might be a lot of evidence to back that up. But by kind of boxing somebody into a small area of just, that's a jerk. Sorry. That person's just a jerk, always will be. Then you're kind of discounting, I guess, the reasoning behind why they might be behaving that way, right? And it doesn't excuse their bullies or their behavior, right? So, for example, if someone's bullying you a lot of the time and you're just like, this person's a complete a-hole, it's like, well, maybe they're super insecure and they got issues, obviously. But by trying to push past just that label, you're able to have a deeper understanding, which might help with conflict resolution, especially if you have to work with this person a lot. And yeah, let's keep going. So the next one is called the magnifying glass type thought. So you can either magnify parts of things. So example, I got a B on my exam, so I'm so inferior to everybody else. Or I got an A. It doesn't mean I'm smart, right? It's like you're focusing on different things. It's like instead of just the reality, okay, I got an A, you have to add something to it, right? It's like to match your belief. All right, the next one is called selective abstraction, also called mental filter or tunnel vision. So this is when you pay attention to one or a few details and fail to see the whole picture. So for example, let's say I'm giving a presentation to you guys. I'm talking about types of thoughts and everything. And everybody in the comments are being very nice, but then there's one comment who says, "You suck." And that's the one that I take away. I'm like, oh, dang, that one person said something super mean. And oh my gosh, guys, if this is you, it's a very natural thing to do. And it's really hard to not just focus on that one negative. A lot of the time people say, it takes 10 positives to undo a negative, right? And that's because these negative things really stick with us. It's hurtful. As opposed to a bunch of compliments. If I compliment you 10 times and then I say, actually, you're super ugly. Like, of course you're going to remember that. Even if I say, oh, never mind, like, you're actually beautiful. I'm going to tell you you're beautiful 10 times. Like, you're going to say, well, geez, you were really mean that one time. Okay, so we talked a few different types of thinking. Mind reading. Have you guys ever done mind reading where you typically do this with people that you know really well and you just think that you know exactly what they're thinking? You got to give them the benefit of the doubt sometimes. And I find that sometimes we almost like bully ourselves through imagining what other people are thinking, right? It's like, oh, this person's thinking so negatively of me. Of course, they're judging me right now. Oh, they probably notice, like this dress, it's actually ripped a little bit in the corner. Oh my gosh, they think I'm the worst. Where it's like, let's stop trying to mind read and let's go with the reality that I don't know what this person is thinking. I might have a good idea. If I'm that curious, let's talk to the person. Let's actually have that conversation with their. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Is there any other ones I want to talk about? Oh, the blame game. Have you guys ever played the blame game where you tend to blame other people for your problems? I'd say I'm the opposite. Technically blame myself too much when I'm like, okay, these people are more responsible than I'm giving them credit for. Yeah. Oftentimes we talk about our parents, okay? So, for example, my parents are to blame for my unhappiness, which might be partially true, but at what point do you want to take autonomy over your life, take control, and say, listen up, I'm going to step up and take responsibility of my own happiness? Like my parents, yeah, they had a negative effect on me, but I'm not going to let them live in my head rent free. Right? And that takes some practice. You can always, they tend to kind of try to ingrain their beliefs into you, right? So it's almost like you got to undo that if they don't align with your own values. And you often see that with people who switch religions or, had very strict parents upgrowing where they have these specific things that they were told to follow. So when you're choosing your own values, how you want to live your own life, you almost feel super conflicted because you have these ingrained beliefs that don't actually align with what you want to live with. So what do you think about all these different types of thoughts? Any resonate with you more than others? Your dad hates you so much. He loves my sister more than me. Oh, I'm sorry. That sounds really hard. That sounds very difficult. Yeah, when parents play favoritism, it really does affect self-esteem, doesn't it? And I find it happens in some cultures more than others. Like, my parents were pretty good. I'd say they tried to keep it pretty immediate. Well, what do you call it? They always say we love you each the same, which is nice. So I can't relate, but I can empathize to your experience of feeling like not as good as your siblings. That would be really hard. Yeah. How do you know that? I guess that's a great question. It's like, what is the evidence, right? Did they tell that to you, or is have that is undetermined? Because sometimes it can feel that way because they're showing you love in a different way. And that's when you can start to communicate your needs, right? You can say, listen, I don't feel as loved as this person. Or if you don't want to say it as directly, you can just give them a key to your inner world. Say, listen, I'm not feeling very loved right now. Here's what I need you to do to make me feel loved. Sometimes it can be as simple as that, right? You're just trying to let them know and give them the answer on how to change and improve. Sometimes we forget that part. It's like, I'm feeling sad. I don't feel loved. But then you don't tell them what to do. It's like you can't expect them to guess or mind read because people are notoriously bad at that. Absolutely. Every child can have their own things to, I don't know, their own purpose, right? That's true. I guess any person in general, not just children. Okay, yeah. So the last thought type that I'm going to talk in this video is the what ifs. Sometimes we can get really caught up in what if my car crashes? What if this person is mean to me? What if, I don't know, the sky falls? And that is kind of a limiting belief, right? You can get caught up in all the different what ifs, which I kind of talked about actually when I said, oh, what if this person says this at the party? What if they do this? You know, it's okay to have an action plan, but it can get too much if you're thinking about this 24/7 about all these what ifs and trying to plan ahead every step of the way so you're prepared for everything. Checking in with your parents, right? Seeing if that is the truth or if this is just a belief. And if that's the case, just knowing that your self-esteem and your value is not connected to your parents' beliefs, okay? Your innate value is just by being who you are. No matter how your parents treat you, that doesn't lower your value as a person. And understanding who you are, your identity, what your purpose is in this world can help you really solidify that. You're absolutely right. Though they hate you, you have to fulfill your duties towards them. Well, that's a cultural thing, right? Some cultures say that parents are really, really important. There's like really strong family ties, right? Whereas in other cultures, it's not so much. It's more individualistic, right? Where families, yeah, they're important, but they're definitely not as, I guess, tight, or you have to follow the instructions of your parents as much as certain cultures like South Asia, where parents are like anything that they say, pretty much. In Canada, it's more like, okay, if my parents said this, it's not even disrespectful per se, but parents give their opinion, but they respect if you decide to do something else, right? But in India, I believe if they tell you to do something and you don't do it, that's seen as very disrespectful. At least that's my knowledge. You can let me know. And again, this is just like generic stuff. Every individual family is different, of course. Avoiding forgiveness. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? Why and why not? What I'm hoping to discuss is not only how this affects you, whether you guys have any grudges, maybe if I have any grudges, but also talk about the themes in sort of movies, TV shows. When you think about avoiding forgiveness, the first person that popped up in my mind was Snape. That was my personal go-to when I was like, oh, yep, he would be exactly the person who would avoid forgiveness, right? When it comes to Severus Snape, I think his, he was bullied as a kid, especially by good old Harry Potter's dad, James Potter, and he just couldn't let it go. Let's just talk Snape. He's a good jumping off point. He is just the the perfect example because he was just so grouchy, right? He could never forgive himself, specifically in the role of Lily Potter's death. And he used that pain kind of as a source of bitter fuel. Like he's the biggest kind of edgy dude, that you could ever imagine. But I think if he had went to therapy, especially with me, if we had worked together, Severus Snape could have really benefited with letting go, going to therapy, finding some emotional peace and authentic connection, okay? If he had let go of that old pain of bullying and stuff, and this is something that I struggle with too, it's time to kind of check in with yourself and say, maybe I shouldn't be, maybe I should do some self work, maybe book a session with a therapist. That can always be helpful, right, guys? She sent him a message saying, I don't know why you're trying to friend me, but like the things that you said to me when we were kids really resonated with me, really hurt me. And I'm not sure why you think that you can be my friend, but I hope you've grown as a person, or at least learned some life lessons that you're not doing this to other people. And it's funny because this guy messaged her back and said, oh, I don't remember doing that, but I hope you're having a good one. Good luck with life, kind of thing. Typically, there's something going on in the background with their family life and everything. I think it's really hard to forgive everybody, that's for sure. I would struggle with it myself, but I have seen people forgive the most vile of situations, the worst things that you could think of. And typically these people who are able to forgive are religious, right? They think that, God heals everyone. I don't talk about my religion, but I would really struggle to forgive some people, that's for sure. And that's on me. It's like, you don't know what other people are going through. And I always say that doesn't absolve them from their actions, but it does give you some understanding and maybe some empathy towards their situation, right? Perhaps they're lashing out at you because they don't have any control in their family life, right? They go home every day and their parents are super awful to them. So what do? They act out at school because that gives them a sense of control in their life when they don't have it anywhere else. Which, yeah, again, it doesn't absolve it. It doesn't make it any less hurtful towards you. But there might be some sort of relief there that it's not just you. I completely validate that. It takes a lot of, I don't know, it's such a hard process to do, right? Because you have to really mean it, right? You can't say, I forgive you, and then it's still in your heart, right? I think a lot of us often have resentments towards our parents. We think that, they could have done something differently, or they really hurt us at certain times. And that resentment still lives within us. And again, like, if you think of it this way, forgiveness is not about the person. It's about you. It really is about self-care, because it is like a heavy backpack that you're carrying around, this resentment, right? It affects you. It affects your happiness. It affects your carefreeness. You're carrying around this anger in your heart. And that's no good, right? It doesn't feel good. And it's your choice, right? You could continue carried around this deep pain, but if you want to heal, you just got to remind yourself that it's self-care. It's not weakness. You're choosing to live in the present and not be shackled in the past. And that's the difference, right? It's a perspective of what forgiveness is. Okay. Our topic of the day is forgiveness, resentment, all that fun stuff. And I also wanted to discuss specifically kind of like the definition, right? So if we talk about grudges themselves, right, it's like a persistent, focused, negative, almost like emotional debt owed to another person, which you mentally are checking in every day or every week, right? It's not reconciliation. It's not excusing bad behavior or pretending the hurt didn't happen. It's kind of like a deliberate, conscious decision to release emotional energy, right? If you're able to define the grudge, that's how you start to heal. Like, name it, especially when it comes to parents, right? I'm sure we can name like a million things or something that they've done in the past to us. And I'm sure they feel the same way towards us sometimes, right? Nobody's perfect. But if you're able to name those things, that's the start. That's the first step. All right. So let's get back to this. Once you've named your grudge, basically, then you can get into the cost analysis, right? That's when you say, what are the pros and cons of holding on to this resentment? And maybe we could all do this right now because it depends. It might be, a protective factor at the moment. So for example, currently actively getting bullied, right? And to forgive them right now, what would that look like? That's what you got to kind of do, right? So the pros would be, protection. It gives you that fuel to keep going, and you're not going to forgive them because they're actively hurting you. But what are the costs? And that's what you got to look into as well. The costs of holding a grudge can be chronic stress, elevated cortisol, which is the stress hormone, not great for you. Disrupted sleep, stuck in emotional processing. I think it is a different situation when it's actively happening. But if it's something that happened in the past, then it's different, right? It's kind of living rent free in your head, even though it's not actively going on right now. I'm not trying to say anybody forced to forgive, right? There are very valid reasons why you would want to hold on to grudges too, especially if they haven't done anything to kind of absolve that, right? But over time, I'd say after like maybe a year or so, and you're still feeling really, really angry, then you can check in with yourself. All right, so let's talk the psychological evidence, right? Studies show that ruminating on past wrongs increases brain activities associated with stress and anger, essentially like re-traumatizing the nervous system every time you revisit the event. So forgiveness actively kind of is like the solution for this, right? It eases these neurological stress markers, which is a great thing to do. So again, I'm kind of giving you evidence here that if you do forgive, it's actually very good for your mental health, and it's not about them, right? It's about releasing the hurt in your heart, right? Now I want you to look into the pros and cons of holding on to that grudge, right? Pros, you're going to hold her accountable, right? By showing how upset you are, you're really expressing your feelings healthily. Of course, nobody's going to forgive somebody right away if they've been deeply hurt by them. You have to express your feelings healthily, acknowledge the hurt. I'm curious kind of how long ago it was, right? That's the other thing. Yeah, how, in essence, do you get over it? That's a great question. Let's check in on that. First of all, you have to decide whether or not you're ready to forgive. So weigh out the pros and the cons of keeping this grudge. Okay, if you feel like you haven't fully expressed the hurt and pain that it's caused you, that might be the time to do it. That might be the first step, is saying, hey, listen, what you did there was really hurtful, and I'm making that that active decision to forgive you now. I want to work forward. So what are we going to do together to make that happen? Like, how can we fix this rift in our relationship, right? Because that's a two-way thing, right? You're still actively in the relationship with this partner. So you're going to give her the blueprint on how to heal these things. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you have to tell her exactly what you need to feel like this is healed too. So that's her part of things, right? There's two parts here, as is all relationships, right? This is what you need from her to feel loved, to feel that she's making an active effort to heal the situation. And then I will tell you some of the interventions. These are specific things that you can do to overcome a grudge, specifically. So the first one is to write down the name of the person and the event which occurred. And then you can write down two things the pain forced you to develop. Was it resilience? Was it boundaries? Was it independence? You're framing the situation as having delivered two gifts you would never have sought otherwise. Again, it's not accepting their behavior, but you're saying, wow, this rough time in my life actually made me stronger, right? It's to shift the brain's focus from what you lost to what you gained. Okay, so let's move on to part 2. Another therapeutic intervention that you could try is called the empty chair release. Now, this one I love. This one is so powerful, and you really have to put 110% into it, right? So basically what you do, we do this in therapy all the time. And again, if you'd like to try this in therapy to create that safe environment or try it on your own, that's up to you. You place an empty chair across from you and you imagine the person from that event sitting there, and you just let all that anger, all that pain, all your demands for justice that you've been holding, you do not hold back. You just freak out at this chair, okay? Oh my gosh, this is such a therapeutic thing to do. Trust me, it feels really good. So then, after you've really let it all out, you've really let out all that anger and frustration, you stand up. You have to know, you have to feel it. I'm done. Consciously walk around the chair and declare, I am done carrying your weight. The debt is settled for my peace. The debt is settled for my peace. You're releasing, you're signaling to your brain, I am dropping this now because I've let it all go. I've let it all out of my system. It can be super, super helpful. It's not about destroying the business. It's about saying this was my experience and I really didn't appreciate it, right? I think there can be a way to phrase it too. So I think one must forgive others, although they have betrayed or cheated on you. Because if we keep that thing inside us, it also becomes a part of that emotional, painful stress. Absolutely. I mean, it does sound easier than it is, right? It's going to take some work, right? Like I talked about, these interventions can be really helpful to work through this. I always say, book with a professional if you feel like you really need help to overcome these challenges. How is it possible to forgive and then forget? I have trouble with it coming back up and starting the same resentment all over again. Yeah, I do feel like maybe talking to a professional about this would be helpful because there's two parts, right? There's the thought patterns there. It sounds like almost a bit of an intrusive thought type situation where it's just popping in your head. And that's often a sign of trauma, right? The situation was so impactful to us that our brain is having trouble processing it, right? So there's specific interventions that we can use. There's, what is it called? I always get the letters wrong. EMDR, yes. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That would be a good one for you because it processes trauma that uses basically eye movements, tap sounds while the patient recalls this distressing memory. And this process helps the brain reprocess the memory, reducing their emotional charge and allowing you to kind of integrate them in a more healthy way, ultimately decreasing the symptoms like flashbacks, anxieties, and even nightmares. This is something that I really want to get my certification in. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is very backed by evidence. You guys could check out all the studies that they've done on it. Yeah, it's really interesting how the brain works. So that's just one solution there, Zach. You could try out this specific thing called EMDR. Or if you want to just get started something small, you could try the 2 gifts exercise, the empty chair release. And finally, this one therapeutic thing where you name the grudge or whatever issue you're having, and you write it down on a big heavy rock, and you put it in a backpack, and like you kind of lug it around for a bit. So basically you're creating the reality of what your grudge is, right? It's like a heavy weight on your back that you're experiencing all the time. And by lugging it around, you're really feeling it. It's like a very, I don't know, it's like almost like a spiritual thing, right? You're carrying this. Sometimes people do like a hike up to the top of the mountain, and they decide at the very top of the mountain, I acknowledge how heavy this grudge is, and I'm ready to take the rock out of my pack and leave it here. I'm taking this experience to process, right? That hike up the mountain, they really felt their feelings. They really went through that. It's like you're working through that. You're giving yourself time to experience that hurt, that pain, that anger. And by the top, you're ready to just let it go. So you take that rock out of your bag and you walk down the mountain again, and you feel so much lighter and happier. You've kind of created this spiritual journey for yourself where you're able to externalize that internal burden. I feel like forgiveness is self-care, right? That's the way that we gotta see it. But it's okay to hold on to grudges for a while too. I don't expect people to immediately forgive somebody that's harmed them, because that's not fair either, right? We have to acknowledge our pain and frustration that people have done to us, right? But it's a balancing act, right? I'm gonna choose to feel my hurt. Maybe I'll talk to the person, confront them. Maybe that'll be therapeutic for me. So just say, hey, you really hurt my feelings. It is what it is, right? It might be doing some more self-care, like running, journaling about it, what have you. But I think, yeah, eventually, if you can find it in your heart to forgive, it's a good thing, though it's not easy. It happened to all of you in that region. Vika says that's the best response for forgiveness is self-care, but sometimes a little bit grudge is important as well. Yeah, absolutely. Just a little bit of a grudge is okay. All right. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about interventions, what a grudge is and whatnot. Let's talk about some other characters who are a really good example of holding a grudge. My favorite one that I came up with was Scar from The Lion King. He's like the embodiment of resentfulness, right? He's so entitled. He thinks that he should just get the crown for no reason. He thinks that he's got a deep grudge just for having the crown, belief that he was unjustly overlooked. So what does he do? He decides to murk his own brother, which is very rude, and didn't do anybody a lot of good. So if lions could go to therapy, freedom from self-consuming ambition would be kind of our main focus, right? It's great to be ambitious, but if he'd accepted his role as a powerful prince and loyal brother, imagine how much more powerful they would be, right? He would have lived a long, respectful life as the prince, avoiding his own catastrophic demise. And yeah, he was prince. That's pretty freaking good. But it wasn't enough for him. I think if there was a therapist lion in the pack, he might have been able to process these emotions a bit better. I also think of, do you guys know the book Moby Dick with the captain guy? He's also a good one, right? I think the story was like did his leg get bitten off by the whale? No, I'm forgetting. The big white whale pissed him off, and he spent his entire life chasing after this whale, which is, again, it's like he really just defined his entire existence by his need for vengeance. Can you guys think of any other characters who are just defined by vengeance? Probably a lot of the villains, right? A lot of the villains would be major vengeance people. Yeah. So if he had just said, oh, maybe the whale was just hungry and scared because I was trying to kill it, and yeah, I should just let it go. Okay, guys. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up then. Thank you for tuning in and checking out my channel. I appreciate all of you who've subscribed. Again, my name is Johanna Dinsdale from Multi-Therapy. We do therapeutic videos. I teach tips and tricks about what I use in therapy. You can feel free to book with me, Joe Dinsdale, at multitherapy.co, or just check out my other videos. We've got a lot of hypnosis videos, educational videos, even some movie review videos. We do all sorts of stuff on this channel. Okay, guys. Well, take care. Vicus, I hope you have a great one. I'm going to pour a coffee out for you, as we say. That's our way of showing respect to people who aren't with us. And take care, and I'll see you in the next one. The Dinsdale here from Multi-Therapy. Some people, really escalate things by their mentality. And that's what I want to address today, is how to overcome the times you get sick from a mental standpoint, which is really interesting stuff, guys. And there's a lot of examples I'm going to be going over. So for example, we'll talk about psychosomatic sicknesses. We're going to be talking man colds, why the man cold occurs. Yeah. So I'm just going to say apologies for the sick voice. Yeah, the mascot mouse. Yes, Chucky. He's looking a bit different these days. They kind of give him a more modern look, which if you've ever seen the original Chucky Cheese mascot, look it up. It's like very scary looking. It was probably a good idea to update him. Yeah, I think Chuck E. Cheese, I watched this documentary about need some medicine. I forgot to take some actually before coming on, so I'll be all right. I think I like to struggle until the very last second before taking medication. See, this is funny. This is how mentality and your actual mental health connects to the way that you address being sick. So when I grew up, my parents were always telling me, don't take medicine. Like, you just let your body handle it. It'll be fine. Like, eventually you could have medicine if it gets really, really, like, you're at the point of unaliving, then we'll give you medicine. And I kind of took that, right, and made up my own story and like, okay, this is how we do things. But now that I'm a bit older and reflecting, I'm thinking, it's not so bad to take a little bit of medicine every here and there. We're all a little crazy, aren't we? Like, what's the definition of a normal person's mental health? Let's try to figure that one out. That's pretty much impossible. Pascal, how do you guys, what kind of medicines do you have? Do you have any like herbal remedies? Like, my parents used to always make us eat an orange when we were sick, which makes sense, right? Vitamin C. It's funny how everybody does things a little bit differently depending on their culture. Douglas says natural is best. Very good, yeah. I'm like right in between. I'm like, yeah, try it my best and then take some medicine if I have to. Okay, somebody's asking how to deal with a narcissistic person. That's a great question. It's really difficult, right? Depending on what kind of relationship you have with them. Is it a parent? Is it a sibling? Taking medicine for mental health, approved. It can be really helpful for people who have like those chronic things such as anxiety or depression. How you do it is you don't give them any power, and you have to understand that their perspective on things, You got to meet them where they at, right? I always like to say, if the bar's in hell, then you can't get disappointed anymore. So, for example, if that person, that narcissist is your mom, and you're saying, all right, I'm constantly disappointed by her because I really want her to love and care for me and like do all this stuff for me and be there for me. You know, that disappointment you're actually creating for yourself because you're not recognizing this person for who they truly are, which is a narcissist, right? And that's where you have to take a step back and say, I'm going to accept this person for who they are. If they change, then great. If they don't change, well, that's unfortunate, but I'm not going to let them disappoint me over and over and over again. I'm going to accept them for who they are. And if you're willing to have a relationship with them, then that's your choice. If not, that's completely fine too. Cutting people out of your life is sometimes the only option if you can't protect your mental health any other way. All right, guys. So we're talking sickness, okay? That's the theme of the day. So let's imagine that you're a person, as soon as you get sick, you start to freak out, right? Like your brain immediately declares like a full scale health crisis as soon as you start to feel that little tickle in your throat, and your brain immediately kind of goes into overdrive, and you need that sympathy from people in your life, like your family or at work. People need to be like, oh, poor you. That makes you feel better. You know, some people nickname this the man cold. Other people call it, you know, just like being a bit dramatic. But here's the thing, there's a fun psychological reason why we react this way. Sachin is giving us the secret to cure a sore throat. Clove plus black pepper, grind them in 1 tablespoon of honey and lemon juice and mix it. Oh my gosh. That actually, if I made that into a tea, I might have it. We do use the honey and lemon trick, but typically with like a ginger tea. I do love clove. I had never eaten clove before. I made like 4 years ago, and now I love it. It's so good. I guess it's not that commonly used in Canada, in my household anyway. Oh no, Helpy, you're bored. I'm sorry that you're sick too. We'll be sick together, but we'll get through this, okay? So let's talk about why being sick can be so annoying, right? So think of it this way. Ever since you were a kid, you're building up kind of like matching emotion with the experience of being sick, right? Often when we're sick as a kid, there's different experiences, right? Some people might have been told, hey, like, stop being dramatic. You need to grow up right now and just deal with your sickness and go to school. We don't care that you're sick. Or they might have said, oh, you poor thing, you poor baby. Let me take care of you and look after you. Oh, you poor thing. We got to really tuck you in. And like, you're basically being taught as a child how you're going to react to being sick when you're older. I have a good friend who has been doing the LSD treatment. That's the thing. Once you take the LSD, you might have a good trip and you might have a bad trip. So there is a good chance that you could be re-traumatizing yourself with the LSD. So if you're willing to take that risk, you could go for it. But yeah, I would say leave that one as the very last option if you can. The reason why it works, basically, LSD, people take it and they have, a lot of people see like either like a deity of some sort, or they go through their past lives, or I don't know, it's all very trippy, but typically people wake up feeling like they've had an epiphany, and that's what we're going for. It's like, oh, I understand myself a lot better after going through that journey of LSD land. Some people use ayahuasca That one's more of a like traditional. I can't remember where they do ayahuasca. Is it Brazil? Or I don't know. Yeah, similar effects as LSD, but they make it more of like a full retreat where you go into like the rainforest and they have like a big bunker, not a bunker, a big tent set up and a bunch of people take ayahuasca all at the same time and they have these visions and stuff. But again, there's definitely pros and cons. You might be there just vomiting the whole time, having a bad time. Or you might have this beautiful la la land dream where you meet your future self. Yeah, right. It's funny. People are very, very divided about medication. But you gotta remember your brain is just a big squishy ball of goop in your head, right? It's not always gonna do the right thing. It's not always gonna think the right thing either. The squishy brain goop sometimes has a chemical imbalance that can be helped with medication. Oh, and to give you an example, if you don't believe in the power of your brain, let's talk psychosomatic injuries. If you guys haven't heard about what that is, it's basically when somebody has an injury that is fully caused by just their mentality. It often happens with people who have been in war. It's like a symptom of their PTSD. And a great example of that that's happened on like major TV is Sherlock Holmes with Benedict Cumberbatch. His little friend there, Watson. At the beginning of the show, he did have a psychosomatic injury where he's limping around at the beginning, and it's not until he goes on adventures with Sherlock Holmes that he's able to overcome that psychosomatic limp because he's just he's distracted, he's living his fullest potential again. He's stimulated by all these mysteries so that that part of him is healed. It's almost like a physical manifestation of the pain that was caused by going into war. Medication helps a lot, but healthy lifestyle is even more important. Yeah, definitely. Some people use medication and then once they fix the other parts of their life, they get back to it. Other people want to try everything else possible until they finally resort to medication. There's no right or wrong answer. When I'm doing therapy sessions with people, I often just let them explore it themselves. I don't try to convince them one way or another. And that's the important thing. You have a choice. But guys, if you truly believe in the power of your own mind, which we all should, it's okay to really be active in your own healing, right? It's important not to panic when we get sick or fall into the trap of reacting to sickness like we did as a kid. We always have a choice when it comes to our reaction to things. The first to get around that is called the detachment symptom. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm getting this tickle in my throat, I'm gonna get sick, and then this is gonna happen, maybe I should call in sick right now, preemptively, it's instead just naming the symptom. It's like, oh, there is a tickle in my throat. Keep it neutral, like you are a scientist. Very neutral and calm. I'm observing the fact that I have a tickle in my throat. Yes, meditation is extremely good for you. I cannot more highly recommend meditation. Your brain deserves a break, right? It really does. It's like a muscle. If you're constantly working out, of course you're going to get burnt out, right? And that muscle gets injured. Meditation has been proven time and time again to be very, very healing for the brain because you're actively giving it a break. And of course, sleeping, that's why sleeping impacts our mental health so much too. That's the time for it to rest and create some crazy, wacky dreams. If we don't get enough sleep, that's when we really start to fall apart. So remembering to prioritize that. If you're drinking a lot of caffeine all the time, maybe stop it just before noon or 1 o'clock. That's what I've been doing. I stopped drinking coffee after 1. That's been working wonders for me. Alternatives to meds: progressive relaxation, visualization, imagery processing. Yeah, there's a lot of great options out there if you don't want to take meds. All right, guys, I think I'm gonna call it a bit early today. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care. If you could create a comfort zone, that's a good way of dealing with sickness too. Just rest, relaxation. You can try the meditation too if you're lying in bed feeling like dead. You can just try to visualize some wonderful, perfect paradise and try to slip into that meditative state because you need healing and rest and relaxation. Keep calm and carry on, as the Brits like to say. As you all are well aware, my name is Johanna Dinsdale from Multi-Therapy, and today we're talking passive-aggressive behavior, obviously. So what is passive-aggressive behavior? Well, I'll definitely give you a few examples throughout this video today. So let's start with what is passive aggressiveness? So for example, it's a lot of eye rolling, it's a lot of snide remarks, it's a lot of sassy comments. Let's get some examples going here. So one example being, usually sassy girls is the first people we think of, right? If you think of Mean Girls, Regina George, the main girl, she is very, very passive aggressive. I love this scene where she's talking to Katie, the transfer student, where she's saying, "Oh, you're really pretty." And the girl says, "Thanks." "Oh, so you think you're pretty?" Like just that kind of thing, right? It's almost like a trap for people. I definitely have in a lot of situations. And let me tell you guys, I definitely had my moments of passive aggressiveness and I really needed a wake up call. One of my friends called me out. It was like I used a lot of humor to deal with issues that I didn't like instead of expressing things in a healthy way. So that was my big moment of growth where I said, okay, I'm going to have to correct some of this behavior here. And that's okay, right? We're always ready to grow as a person, to change our bad behaviors. You come from a family where parents' emotions almost always through passive aggression. So what's another example of passive aggressive behavior? Has anybody ever seen the movie The Devil Wears Prada? That one was such a classic with Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep. So Meryl Streep's character was like the definition of passive aggressiveness, right? She always had this like deadpan look and just roasted people in a very nonchalant way, right? Sometimes it was just straight up aggression, right? And sometimes it was passive aggressive. She would kind of make her statements almost sound like advice, even though it was absolutely brutal, right? And a veiled insult. I definitely use humor in my therapy sessions and stuff, but I think there's a time and a place, right? It's all about expressing yourself in a good, healthy way. And that can take some practice. I used to like lean way too much into being sassy. And when my friend called me out, I was like, oh, dang. And I had to do some self-reflection and said, All right, you're right. I need to be more clear, more assertive in my communication style. And we're going to get into all of that, ways on how to communicate better, how to communicate more assertively, especially with passive aggressive people. We'll cover both. We'll cover what if I'm passive aggressive and want to work on it, and what if somebody else is passive aggressive to me and I want to almost either shut it down or set some boundaries there so they stop doing it to you. It's pretty common, I find, in people's workplaces. Oh, Drizzy's got a serious question for me. Your country is facing, an epidemic of self-harm. How could you suggest men open up to their loved ones without seeming unmanly? Wow, that's a really good question, Drizzy. And I will answer. It's, first of all, it's very much a cultural thing, right? To think of emotional vulnerability as weakness, right? As unmanly. But let's try to shift that frame of mind. Being emotionally vulnerable with your partner is actually creating a stronger connection between the two of you. By expressing your true needs, your true feelings, you're giving them the blueprint into your inner world. And that's a sign of strength, not weakness, right? By doing that, you're bringing each other closer together. You're making each other a team, as opposed to trying to do things all independently. So I hope that helps. If you're feeling those types of feelings, those thoughts, I highly recommend, really, really strongly recommend talking to a professional about it, okay? Really important, because they can help you work through that too. Partners are great to open up to, but it's really good to talk to somebody who has training to help you process those emotions, to challenge those thoughts, all sorts of things. There's specific programs designed to help you work through that. All right, now let's define passive aggression. It's the indirect expression of hostility, resentment, or anger. Indirect being the key word. It's anger that doesn't feel safe to show openly, or judgment, so it kind of leaks out in a different way, you know? The person using passive aggressiveness is usually facing like a fear of conflict, which I definitely had. I used to hate conflict. Like, I would avoid confrontation like crazy. Like, I just would not do it. And I would like get super anxious even thinking about it. But, you know, with studying therapy and everything and working on myself, that's when you realize, okay, it's time to like push through that fear. And the more that you practice it, guys, the more you realize that it's okay to set some boundaries, right? And if people keep pushing through that, at least you were really clear in your boundaries and you can talk your way through it, right? It's like I told you a specific boundary. I wasn't sarcastic this time. I wasn't telling it through a joke. This is my needs. If they meet it, great. If not, then you can do another confrontation. Hey, I told you this boundary. Can we talk about why you're not upholding that? It makes me feel bad, right? Like, this is my experience. Vicus, you've seen people showing passive aggressive behavior. Like, I believe it's a very childish thing to do, right? Well, that's a really good point, Vicus. I think people use passive aggressiveness for a lot of different reasons, right? Sometimes they're not even aware that they're doing it. Like myself, when I was in university, I was like the most passive aggressive person, okay? Nobody's perfect here, guys. And that was something that I had to work on, right? I just didn't realize that that was my style of communication. So once I became aware of it, that's the first step, right? Becoming aware of it. You might have been taught it. You might have been in a friend group that used it a lot, so you picked it up, what have you. And once you're aware of it, that's when you decide, okay, maybe I'm going to change this. Maybe this pattern of behavior used to work for me in the past, right? Typically, we use this type of communication because it works for you. But it's like, maybe I don't want to use this anymore because I can use more assertive communication that brings people closer together rather than kind of using snide remarks to get my way. Yeah. So we discussed, the core conflict, the why. The person using passive aggressiveness is usually experiencing a fear of conflict. It worked for them in the past. There's a few different ways to realize if somebody's being passive aggressive to you. First of all, the sarcastic compliment. We talked about that one from Mean Girls, where she said, "Ooh, I think you're really pretty." And she says, "Thanks." "Oh, so you think you're really pretty?" Basically saying, "Oh, so you're full of yourself," right? That is a trap, guys. That is a trap. Or for another one, "Oh, I love that top. You're so brave for wearing that. I could never." Like that kind of thing. I find that, not to be stereotypical, sometimes the ladies use that more often than the men when it comes to the sarcastic compliments. Okay, another example of passive aggressiveness is the purposeful oh gosh, my tongue. The purposeful procrastination. Agreeing to a task and then failing to deliver out of subtle spite or resistance. So like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll definitely get that started for you." And then just not doing it, right? That's passive aggressive because you're just not saying, "Hey, I can't do it. I'm sorry." You're like being silly about it, right? You're kind of avoiding that conflict. Basically, we're talking about passive aggressiveness, which is like snide, sassy comments rather than being direct when it comes to your communication style. We give examples like the sarcastic compliment, just like purposeful procrastination, where you say you'll do something really sassily and then don't do it. The silent treatment actually comes across as passive aggressive too, right? It doesn't fall under the category of aggressiveness, right? It's just, sulking almost, right? That is kind of a bit of a manipulation tactic, right? It's okay to be withdrawn and like processing your emotions and everything, but you gotta let the other person know in order to be assertive, right? That upset me, so I'm just gonna take some space would be the more assertive way to do it. All right. So let's talk a little bit about attachment theory and how that ties into the passive aggression, right? It's highly correlated with anxious or avoidant attachment styles. Anxious people fear rejection so much that they avoid direct confrontation, right? And then avoidant attachment styles avoids all emotional intensity, right? So they really withdraw. That's where the silent treatment comes in, because they just can't process and engage in that conversation. Hopefully that caught you up. That's a really great question, Jackson. That's a really good question. There's a lot of psychological things that occur when you're in a cult. Specifically, there's a lot of group mentality, right? This is the study of when people want to follow a leader, right? They want to feel like part of a community. And often cults prey upon the people who are very vulnerable, who don't have a lot of people or support in their lives, which makes it a lot easier for them to get manipulated. And it doesn't mean that they're stupid, like it doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. It means that they are looking for connection. They're looking for community, which they get from this cult, right? So once they're in that situation, it's really hard for them to get out because, firstly, as we know, like cults are really good at isolating people too, right? They slowly, increase the demand of oneness, right? Of collectivism. It's called collectivist thinking, where instead of thinking of your own self, you're thinking of yourself as a collective and you have to follow the group, right? Some people just don't have that programming, right? They're a free thinker, and they challenge those things. They challenge those thoughts naturally, whereas some people just, they don't they don't have that natural thing. Maybe they need to be taught it, or maybe something needs to happen really negatively in the cult, right? It's almost like the pros and cons. People find it more beneficial to stay in the cult as opposed to leave it. I hope that helps. There's a lot of different psychology involved in cults, but yeah, that's just like a brief little summary. There was this great podcast I was listening to about this woman who escaped the cult and her experience, and it sounds very similar to yours, where she was confused about why people were just accepting this, right? She was really unhappy being a woman. Like, she was thought of as like a second-class citizen. So again, it's like those pros and cons, right? She's saying, why am I being treated like this? You know, why do I have to follow all these rules but the men don't? So that kind of opened her eyes a little bit too, right? She started to challenge these things. Identity is a huge piece of the puzzle. Yeah, for sure. Death says, it's true, a collective and group probably hard to leave. Some of the people you met and connection you made in them. Absolutely. Hi, Chess. Therapeutic interventions. Right. Let's get to what to do if you're experiencing passive aggressiveness from people and you want to push past that and set some boundaries, okay? The first thing to do, and the really easy way, this is like the biggest hack, is to use the I statements, okay? When you feel criticism, respond by using a non-accusatory I feel statement that focuses on the behavior, not the person. So for example, instead of saying, why are you being mean? You can say, I feel uncomfortable when I hear that tone, and I need you to address me directly, please. You hear that? The thing is, you're saying you're feeling, and people cannot argue against your feelings. They might try. They could say, oh, you're not uncomfortable, but it's like, well, actually I am. I'm telling you that I am. I work with a lot of clients, right? And there are some people who are really good at twisting, deflecting the conversation, flipping it back on you. Well, you did something, so that's why I said that, right? Stand your ground and start analyzing the conversation for what it is, right? If you have maybe, let's say, a passive-aggressive coworker, sort of put on your scientist hat, okay? Like, okay, I'm like the detective. I'm going to figure out our pattern of communication and why it's gotten so toxic, right? So they come up to you, they're really sassy about your report instead of just being direct and saying that you missed a part of it or something, right? And that's how you can step in. I feel uncomfortable when I hear that tone. Like, can you just address me directly? They might say, oh, I wasn't doing that, right? Typically, people go into defensive mode, right? Nobody likes to be called out. And that's when you can just, reassure them. That's okay. Like, sorry. I was going to say you don't need to get defensive, but it's a really good idea to avoid even talking about them. Just talk about your experience, right? That way you're not creating an argument. It's like, that's okay. I'm just telling you, I would really appreciate it if you could speak to me a bit more kindly when we talk about this thing, right? What is exactly that you need from me? And setting these boundaries may take some time, right? They might get angry. They might get, even more sassy. But it's just about being calm, right? Even non-judgmental curiosity can occur, right? It's like, oh, I just noticed that you sighed really loudly, not sarcastically, like, oh, I just noticed that you sighed. Is there something you'd like to say to me about this request? That kind of thing. Oh, I just noticed that you rolled your eyes. What's up? What are you thinking about? You got to be really, really gentle, because this person is obviously struggling with their communication style, right? And by doing this, you're giving them an opportunity to express themselves in a better way, right? You're kind of guiding them down the trail of assertive behavior. And again, it's not up to you to be their therapist, right? But it's about you setting boundaries. By doing this, you are creating these boundaries for yourself. I love to hear the stories about the people who have left cults. It's such an inspiring tale, right? Because yeah, it's a hard thing to do to escape them because there's so much psychologically happening that's trying to keep you there, right? You got the isolation from the outside world. There might even be physical boundaries, right? That keep you within the confines and you're not allowed to leave. So there's a lot up against you in order to push through and, yeah, escape. This is Meme Lord. Thanks for listening about the cult. Wish I could have others that left join a real Christian group like I have. But I completely understand their trauma and don't push it ever. Yeah, Meme Lord. It's definitely not easy, and congratulations for getting out of that situation and still having that faith, right? It sounds like you just found a healthier group to join, which is wonderful to hear. You're right? Like faith depends on your own beliefs, and if you're finding that the group that you're in isn't reflecting your own values, what is important to you and your meaning in life, then yeah, maybe it's time to make a change. My computer doesn't love when I live stream, so let's give it a try. Put it over here. Here we go. You see the confusing, it's so confusing to me, like as if, like that's so sassy, right? She's acting confused and innocent when instead of just saying, hey guys, like this could have been done a bit quicker, please. Ready. So sassy. Oh my gosh, this lady is so funny.
It's a tough call. They're so different.
Yes, I am excited to see the sequel. She's going out of her way to embarrass her right now. And this is where it's like, it's borderline aggressive now, I would say. It's slipping out of passive aggressiveness to straight up. Ooh, dang. Yeah, roasted. Freaking roasted by Miranda. I will definitely be watching the sequel, but I can't imagine it being as good as the first one. It's untouchable. Yes, indeed. What do you guys think? Was that a good example, or do you think she was too aggressive in his universe that learns how to lie and he just becomes like, of course, hilarity ensues? He's like starts his own religion by accident and stuff. He says he knows what happens in the afterlife, and everybody believes him, of course, because they don't know what a lie is. So yeah, that is kind of like to the extreme of what would happen if you just never lied at all, right? It is a very sociable, acceptable thing to tell these white lies, but it's always good to check in with yourself to see the balance. Liar. That one is a bit older. That must be the original one. I can't remember that movie very much, but I do remember the title. What do you guys think? Do you think that it's okay to tell a little lie every now and then? Again, I feel like it's very much of a philosophical thing. So, for example, we talked about filters here. It's like, is filters considered a lie or not so much? I guess it depends on the person. It's so normalized these days. Yeah, Matt, you think that it's okay to lie, not to hurt someone's feelings? Yeah, I kind of agree with that sometimes, especially if somebody's cooking something for me. If it doesn't taste amazing, I'm okay with just saying that it tastes fine. I think that's a pretty acceptable white lie. I don't think anybody's going to be too mad at me for that one. Yeah, but let's talk about lying to ourselves, okay? So there can be a little bit of sabotage with small lies, like micro deception kind of thing. You know, it's about insecurity sometimes, right? You tell small lies about yourself to manage other people's perceptions about you.
which is kind of like, it seems that you feel